Tomatoes are berries. Raspberries are not berries.
Are avocados berries?
Yes. Most fruits are berries, and most berries are not berries.
Butterscotch
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 169 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game and dev comedy podcast, Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and my coffee is too damn hot.
I'm Sam, and I'm the visualizer of imaginary space.
And this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today is September 17ber. 2018. Before we get started, we have a warning. Anything can happen on this show. There's going to be profanity, and then we're going to talk about stuff that children probably don't care about. So if you're a child, you can just skedaddle on.
Sally on out.
On out of
Get
here.
on your scooter, scoot on out.
Yeah. A lot of people I've seen driving electric scooters around
Yeah,
town.
that became a thing, I think, a few weeks ago.
Just all of a sudden.
Yeah.
There's these, it's almost like a ride-sharing company where they've got these scooters parked everywhere. You got your app, and you kind of, I guess, like hurl your phone at the scooter, and then
Yeah, I
the
think
scooter's
so.
like, phone acknowledged, and then you get on it.
And then it sucks
But
money
it
out of
looks
your bank
weird
account.
because they're extra long scooters, so you can get both feet on it. And something about seeing somebody scooting with 2 feet on the scooter just seems, it feels
Well, it's because
weird.
they're motorized.
Yeah, they're totally
So you
motorized.
can just zoom around on those things like crazy.
Like, yeah, seeing somebody on a scooter but not actually using the leg to do the scoot move, and they're just kind of standing on it. I don't know.
But it's another example of this kind of comical tech disruption thing because apparently this is it's like a plague of locusts situation where these scooters and bikes and things that people can just get with their phones and then ride around have just been unceremoniously sort of dropped in most major cities in the U.S. as of the last 6 months to a
yeah,
year.
when we were in Seattle, we saw those lime bikes,
All over the
green
place.
bikes everywhere, and we kept seeing them just utterly destroyed with like wheels bent in half, and
Yeah.
one of them was up on a terrace, crammed into a bush with its back wheel missing. I was like, what?
How'd you get that there? But I think the interesting thing about it is it's definitely one of those ask for forgiveness, not for permission things. Because apparently there's been a lot of cities who are like, we don't have any rules now about where are you supposed to put your scooter? Because they're blocking sidewalks. They're just showing up all over.
Yeah, the
place.
scooters are parked on the sidewalks. People drive them on the street.
Sometimes.
Yeah, like I've seen so many people just driving their scooter in traffic. They're not wearing a helmet. They're not wearing. They're just like, I'm done with work, and they hop on their little electric scooter, and now they're just like going 15 miles an hour with cars lining up behind them.
Yeah.
It is a great way to die.
It's a great. I mean,
It's just one of those things.
it's going to be probably one of the more peaceful ways. I mean,
It
right
will be
up until the
fast.
exact moment
yeah.
that you get hit,
You're just scooting along, having a great time, and then suddenly you're not in this plane
you're
anymore.
just gone now.
Riding a bike to work and stuff is something that I've always thought would be really cool to do. Except
tried it once.
I don't want to die though, and so I think the best policy is to be in your car no matter where you go in the U.S. because everything is so
You need to wear
pedestrian or
armor.
bike friendly. Yeah, because you have to have armor, and your armor has to be the size of a vehicle.
That's true. There's
Otherwise-
You
guns.
basically need to get in your mech
Yeah.
to go to work.
Yeah, if they make mech scooters where you sort of you stand on the thing and then kind of
it's like
Iron Man style,
sort of
yeah, just
power
kind
armor.
of goes all around you,
And then it's
it
just got
cases
little
you.
tiny scoot wheels on the feet.
Yeah.
And then you just stand in the Iron Man suit
That'd be
while your
awesome.
scoot feet take you to
If we've learned anything from the Iron Man show, if you're in that suit, anything can happen to you and you're fine.
Yep.
Except for that guy who got paralyzed when he fell.
Yes.
That
right.
one did happen.
Yeah,
but
because for some reason he couldn't.
Well, he didn't have the main character,
he didn't have that buff.
Or
The main
He was a secondary character. So yeah. Anyways, let's get on to the podcast. First, we'd like to thank our donors from moneygrab.bscotch. I'm always going to say donators, but that's
Sure, why not? Let's make it a thing. Trademark.
this is from moneygrab.bscotch.net. These are people who have supported the podcast financially, and this is
And also with their organs sometimes.
yeah. People keep sending us kidneys, which we're just kind of eating them because I don't really like. We
What
don't.
else do you
we've
do
already
with them?
got two.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not medical doctors, but
I don't
we
know what
can
they're for.
eat.
Yeah, they're okay.
They got a tang.
You got to
Yeah.
put some red chili powder on them.
Yeah, that helps a lot.
Yeah. And we got a message from a delicious cookie who said, "Hey guys, because I'm following this podcast and the company since about episode 60, already 2 years. I thought it was a good idea to let some brothers grab money from me. Free coffee for you.
Thanks.
So thanks very much. And also we'd like to thank our recurring supporters who are donating on a monthly basis, which is fantastic. All right, on to the news. So this past week in the studio, we had a big sort of admin week where we spun up a QA division.
Yeah. Surprise. So it was one of those things where we had been, last week we talked about the Nintendo announcement and all the work that went into that, and this sort of 6-week stretch of building a bunch of stuff, doing a bunch of marketing work, all this. And the reality was that also we needed to give them a playable of Levelhead.
Yeah, they needed to make sure we had an actual functional game before they would agree to have us participate in literally anything, which is, I guess,
seems reasonable.
I guess it's fair.
And the problem with it, though, is that because there's so few of us and we all are doing everything, that if we wanted to test the game to make sure it worked on the Switch or frankly on anything, we have to basically stop development or stop marketing or stop web development.
Well, and there are two kinds of it working, right? There's it works while you're developing it, which means you haven't tested for edge cases and whatever. You basically have tested the things that you've done to make sure that they worked more or less as expected.
Like I need to implement throwing the package. Right. I code that up. I throw the package a few times.
Cool,
I'm like,
it works.
Seems good.
But you don't then also go on and just ask, what happens if I throw the package into 100 different things? What happens if I throw the package on Android versus?
Yeah, because I got shit to do.
Yeah, and so playable in development is very different than playable for a human being who is not making that game.
Yes, a player,
some would will
say.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we realized we just don't have the bandwidth to be able to reliably, if anybody comes to us and says, hey, we have this opportunity for you, can you take part? There's always this sort of, there's too much push and pull right now, or at least there was, for us to be able to confidently say, yes, have a build and have it not be sort of a flaming dumpster pile when they got it.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the goal of the QA department, but it has been a bit of there's always admin work associated with these sorts of things. So we got new machines. We cleared out one section of the office.
Total office rearrangement.
And
it was like a big moving day.
Yeah, so. They did just a ton of this sort of all these odds and ends.
There's also the IT of like making sure accounts are secure, getting all the software needed on the new machines, and then of course there's the finding people to hire part-time to do this work, and then doing orientations and training and stuff like that.
Well, and QA is particularly weird too, because you could have, we're a small company where we work on our stuff pretty fast, but it's not like there aren't a million things to test all the time.
Right. And because of these spikes of administrative work and stuff, sometimes several days go by and we don't actually get to make progress on the game, whereas other times a few days go by and the game completely transforms into something else.
So our QA needs are these weird kind of spikes that would be served well only by a part-time group, but further, not just by one person, because a single person doing QA is not sufficient, because the whole point of QA is to get a whole bunch of different, sort of brains
approaches,
attacking the thing to try to represent the things that your players are going to do.
And we want to test multiplayer.
Which
it's hard to
requires
do
multiple people. And so we kind of had no choice but to treat this as this experimental part-time gig, because there was no feasible way at our scale to make like a full-time QA team, because then we would need to hire like 4 people full-time.
Yeah.
And then somehow feed them enough stuff to give them each 40 hours of work.
So they're not just sitting there being like, when's the next build coming?
Yeah.
Because there's also that problem of getting the game to a state where we're confident we could hand it to a tester and have them just play through it without any like horribly game breaking issues. Actually does take some upfront testing for us. Got to make the build, run it, make sure that it actually functions and everything.
To get it ready for QA.
We got to do some.
Yeah.
We have to do a very small amount of testing, by comparison, to hand it off to the testers. And so if we wanted to do continuous testing, where like we had a full-time tester in every day and they're testing every change we make, then we would need a much more involved process to sort of keep ourselves in line.
Until we have a robot building our builds for us, that's just not really an option.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is kind of a very lightweight thing that we're doing, and we're going to kind of just see what happens, see how it goes. But yeah, that should solve some of our problems.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the games as they get patched or updated and the new ones come out, they end up feeling just tighter overall. Less problems on day one, which would be nice.
Yeah. And so if anybody in the future has questions about this kind of stuff, send them over to us for the podcast, because I'm sure we'll learn all kinds of weird things over time for this. Also, one final news item is, of course, Shenanicon. It's happening
October 20th.
October 20th. And it is a 4-hour event, maybe 5.
Yeah, we're still hammering out the final details.
Yeah.
Of the
so this is like a super last minute planning. We just thought of this a week ago, and we're now throwing it together. And it's an event where it's going to involve hanging out with us, the devs, we're going to do a live podcast, and we're also going to show Levelhead and let people play Levelhead. And that will be sort of an exclusive thing because we're not going to be in sort of like an open beta at that time or anything like that. So you'll be able to get your hands on the game early and give us feedback on it as well and stuff like that.
Yeah, so Levelhead's going to be kind of the headliner of the show with a sprinkle of podcasts and hanging out with devs around it.
Yeah, and there will be food. So if you want to get involved in this event, it's here in St. Louis. It's on October 20th. Tickets are $15. Which is largely to cover the cost of food.
And putting it together.
And putting the thing together, which does take a fair amount of time. But so it's pretty exciting. We've never done anything like this before. I don't know. You guys have any?
I would say get in on those tickets, because if you went over and you saw that the number of tickets available, you're like, oh, there are plenty left. I can wait on this decision, which is true, except that we haven't been advertising heavily because we wanted to make sure that our podcast listeners and our people in our Discord and stuff who are mostly not local would have the opportunity to make plans and get tickets and get here before we try to fill up the event with more local people.
Yeah, so the marketing is going to start this week, basically, for it to actually get all the tickets sold. There's only 50 of them, I think.
40 now.
40, okay.
And we kind of assume, that a lot of the people will be just from St. Louis or from the surrounding area because, it's a evening event as opposed to like a PAX thing where it's a 4-day long, people coming from all around the world kind of a thing. We're keeping it pretty small and simple for now, but so get on that. That's over at meet.bsketch.net, meet.bsketch.net. All right. And also this past week, Sam and I learned some valuable life lessons that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
What happened? We built computers.
Yes. So, I think the backup story here is that my laptop, it started sort of bubbling in the middle, which that word applied to what is supposed to be a metallic solid object is generally not.
Well, this is kind of like when your tire gets a sidewall bulge.
Yes, precisely.
So it's for the laptop.
My computer hit a pothole and the battery sort of like does this whomp, and it was affecting the keyboard such that the keyboard had a bit of a wave to it. I was just looking and I was like, this looks bad. So
did that actually add some ergonomic improvements?
It did, actually. My left hand felt much nicer, but I sent a note to MSI, which is the maker of the laptop, and said, hey, I got this thing. I think it's the battery because it must be the battery. And they said, yeah, that's definitely the battery, but you're out of your warranty range.
You're probably way out of warranty by now.
It's way out of warranty because it's like a 4 or 5 year old thing.
This is how warranties work.
When you need it, it's not there.
They're like, what is the most likely time this computer is going to break? Okay, well, we don't want to deal with that, so we'll just make the warranty 6 months prior to that.
It's only for covering lemons.
If you ever buy a warranty, you're wrong statistically, because if you buy every warranty over your life, then statistically you are on the losing side of that transaction.
That's true. But that's assuming you buy infinite things that could have warranties,
or even if you buy 1,000 things,
then it may or may not be.
It's a pretty good sample size.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. So back to the laptop. So this battery's bulging, and I asked them, I'm like, can you fix it or whatever else? And they said, well, it's definitely the battery, but you're going to have to replace it yourself. And then I do some Googling around and come to the understanding that replacing the battery inside of this particular laptop is apparently like a
nightmare hellscape.
You need nanites to do it, probably.
Yeah. And they're like, you can do it, but it's also totally possible that you'll kind of break the computer in the process. So
they're like, you can do it, but the technology to execute this maneuver just doesn't quite exist yet.
Yeah.
And the problem is like the computer's already warped. Like it's already got some structural problems. So I instead of being like, I'm going to go in there and, pay a couple $100 for a new battery and then sacrifice potentially a limb as the battery implodes while I extricate it from this.
And they don't have like an unbending division over there.
Yeah. You can't just like send it in.
They can't unbend it.
So I talked to Seth about it. I said, hey, I think I need to get a new machine. And then the battery light started flashing. So I didn't know this was even a thing, but there's that light on your computer that is, of course, the battery thing. It shows you, is your battery going to die, whatever else, or is it charging? Also has another state for essentially if the battery
panic mode.
Yeah, if the battery can't figure out what its charge is anymore, then it has like a flashing orange light. So this started and I was like, that's new. Google it. And it basically said that what that means is that the computer can no longer figure out what is happening to the battery. And then I also read that the batteries can just explode. And so I was like, maybe maybe it's time before I burn down.
Well, this is
our
your
office.
one. This is your one work computer, you
Yes.
know, that you're using for everything.
Right. So we got. So I said, Seth, hey, I need need a new machine, but I feel like you guys built quite a few machines growing up,
Oh yeah.
I used to work in a computer repair shop, even.
right?
So I built a lot of computers.
Yeah, I've built all of my PCs, and I built my wife and I our newest ones like 6 months ago.
So I've built maybe 3, and usually it was in the context of with you guys also. And so when I came to this crossroads, I was like, I need to get a new computer, and then I thought, I hate everything about this. So Seth, can you figure out what goes in it and just go it? And Seth said, yeah, and also I need one too. So we decided to double up on it so we could have just a build day, and everything came in last Wednesday.
The parts are trickling in over the week.
just stacking up in the office.
Stacking up.
And so finally it's time to do the build. And so we get all the parts, we blow it out, and then Seth somehow remembers how to assemble this thing by memory. So I'm looking through the instruction guide, trying to be helpful. Not really.
I'm teaching Sam about thermal paste and
all sorts of horrible things.
serial ATA cables.
So we go through and we're assembling this thing, and 2 things happen. So one is that you have to like slot things in to the motherboard, which is the sort of the major element that everything plugs into in your tower desktop. And the problem is that
It's the board that's always like, hey, you kids, come on,
get your work done.
behave.
So the problem is that it has these connectors and things all around the edges, and once the directions given by the instruction manual were to put in both the processor and this huge fan and fully attach them to the motherboard.
I got us some pretty beefy cooling fans, beefing fans.
But the issue with this was that the fan was so huge that once
it was outrageous. I've
once
never
it was
seen anything like it.
to be fair, that fan is about half the size of my home cooling fan,
Okay.
which looks like a motorcycle. But
so once this thing was attached to the motherboard, you essentially have this skyscraper in the middle of this, little plane of circuit, and you can't get your hand in around it and around the case of the machine to plug in these various things. And so Seth conveniently, maybe out of experience, brought this roll case of various tweezers.
you got to have your tweezers kit.
And so it was like playing Operation. We're trying to get these things plugged in, and
And
Seth
it's
couldn't.
electrocuting you the whole time.
I have
great.
I have a kit. I brought my PC screw kit, which has all possible sizes and shapes of screws that you would need to build a PC. I brought my adaptable magnetic screwdriver kit that has super long, skinny, exchangeable parts.
But
and
my
I
favorite
brought
part
my
was
tweezer kit.
that none of them mattered when it came to this particular problem, because you can't grapple whatever the power connectors are. You can't grapple them with the tweezer hard enough to get them to not
plug
wiggle
them in.
around while you put them on these 4 tiny hypodermic needles that are poking out of the board.
because A, you can't see the port, and also because the tweezers are, even though they're like 6 inches long, they're 1 inch too short, such that as you whenever your hand hits resistance of the thing you're trying to get through, the tweezer's still just not quite there yet.
So you got to do it by hand. And so it was this major struggle for I think like 20 minutes, both of us trying to just get your fingers to cooperate, get this thing lined
This
up.
does make me feel much better about my own way of putting computers together, which is to not get enormous cooling fans for my CPU. I just get the one that comes with the processor, the shitty one,
Turns
The
out
thing is, this processor didn't come with one.
And so, but you're like, this doesn't come with one. I guess I better give
me
an enormous one.
give me a refrigeration device.
I got a
And it's
medium
basically
one.
glued to the top now too. So it's
it's on there.
It's on there.
It's on there real good. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so we finally get these things attached, and then after that, I think at some point we needed to stand up, and both of us, we've been laying on the floor in weird positions, like kind of cropped up on an elbow, on a knee,
or just sitting cross-legged.
Yeah,
not
we
even that weird of a position.
we sit up. Both of us are like, ah.
I've had my legs fall asleep, where it's like tingly and stuff. In this case, my legs, I just couldn't feel them. They were just
They didn't exist
They were just
anymore.
completely numb.
You're a phantasm.
This is
from
also
the
what
waist
happened
down.
when I built my wife's and my machines a few months ago.
Your whole body decomposes.
Yeah, it was a very different experience than the last time I had built a PC for myself, which was like 7 years.
Well, this
before
is
that.
exactly it. Because the combination because I think I last built my own computer from the ground up back in 2010, which was of course 8 years ago.
Yep.
I was 20
You were
23.
sprightly.
Real sprite. You're mostly cartilage still.
I was basically a baby.
Yep.
And I could be like doing a backward handspring while building this computer, and I wouldn't have noticed, you know. And now I'm literally just sitting, and it's like the most horrifying pain I've ever experienced. And then so there's like this solid reminder of like, hey,
you've aged, buddy.
You've aged. And then on top of that, I'm looking at the parts, and the last time I built the computer, I needed to get a hard drive. I needed to get a CD drive with a DVD burner, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
This computer, this new computer is made of parts that literally didn't exist back then, and also is missing a bunch of parts that are no longer used.
I still remember back when we were first putting PCs together, putting in the floppy drive.
Yeah.
You put in your floppy drive, you put in your CD drive, you put in your DVD.
Yep.
DVD
3 different drives,
and your hard drive. So you've got these like, and they're all huge. You know, you've got this. So most of the cases, these giant chunks of like boxes, you know, that have different mechanical moving parts in them. This computer, the only moving parts are the fans. There's no CD drive, no DVD drive, no floppy drive.
And you pulled out the terabyte solid state drive.
Solid state drive is
it weighs like a
credit card.
It looks like a credit card, and it's got a terabyte of storage on it. You know,
and I'm like, what the
and
hell?
Like, it's like, where do you put it? Oh, you just like put it in this tiny little slot, like right there.
You just screw it onto the thing, basically,
because it's not moving.
Yeah,
it's good.
It has no moving parts, you know, and so and then I'm looking at the case.
Mine's actually just hanging loose in my case.
It doesn't have to hang it.
It's just dangling.
It doesn't. Yeah, you don't need it to do.
It has no weight.
It's a dangle brain.
Yeah,
because a hard drive is literally, it's like a record player. You know, it's got spinning discs in there with little heads and stuff. And solid state drive is, you know, it's like it's like a thumb drive, right? So yeah, so just kind of after all that work, putting all these tiny parts in, and then stepping back and looking at the computer and being like, I don't even recognize this thing that I just built.
Yeah.
There's almost nothing in this case. What the hell is going on? And I even remember
the case is really just for that giant fan you bought.
Basically,
yeah, pretty much.
And the LEDs.
So everything about this whole experience was just like, time has passed. Okay, a significant amount of time has passed. The end.
Well, we were talking about it's kind of like building your own lightsaber in Star Wars, right? You go into a cave, you get your what are those crystals called? The force focus crystals, and then you gotta go and, as a rite of passage, sort of shove it into this device and not burn your hands off.
Yeah. Now, and of course, Kylo Ren, he fucked it up and he cracked his crystal, and now his lightsaber's all like sparky and shit. So maybe that's going to happen to one of our computers.
Maybe the crystal cracked him, though. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Could be,
because he's whacked.
That also might happen with our computers?
It might.
So there was this whole thing happened last week. And then on the way to work this morning, I'm listening to this podcast called Crazy Genius, which is basically they kind of talk about technology and science and kind of new things going on. They talk to a lot of researchers and scientists and stuff. And this time they were talking about aging.
Convenient.
And every time I hear people talk about aging, I get the fundamentals of it is that people believe that aging is largely sort of like information loss in your DNA as it replicates over time, because the telomeres, like the tips of your DNA stuff, just get sort of like frayed and shitty over time.
Well, I mean, it's not about.
I'm like really.
It's not about information loss, but the telomere thing is both true and not required, because telomeres, because of how DNA replication works, just actually have to get shorter every time your DNA is replicated.
So every time you have a cell,
divides, your telomeres have to get. It's the end caps on your DNA, right? And so at some point, if this goes down too far, then now you basically have this like loose end of DNA, and this causes very bad things to happen. But until then, it's like a short telomere and a long telomere. What's the difference? Doesn't fucking matter. But it's sort of, you can think of it as like a timer that's measuring number of divisions. And so once you hit that number, there's a word for it. I think that's what the Hayflick limit is. It's been a long time. I can't remember all the words, but the idea is there's a limit on how many times a new cell can divide before absolute chaos, which basically kills the cell.
Because it's gotten so short that it doesn't have enough.
Well, it's gotten so short that it actually inserts itself into itself. And so it turns into basically DNA chaos. And so there are many, I'm not sure which one you're going to be talking about, but there are many, many theories about like why things are this way, because they don't have to be. And in fact, our stem cells don't do that at all. They actually, they have an enzyme called telomerase that increases their length every cell division so that they never get shorter.
Right.
And there are some mammals, I think mice actually don't, they just always have telomerase going. So they don't even have this happen at all.
Yeah.
But there's one hypothesis, which is that this is basically an anti-cancer mechanism, because
it's not working.
Well, but the thing is, that's not true.
It probably
because,
is working.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
true.
like just because we get cancer doesn't mean our bodies aren't doing a really good job of preventing us from getting it.
That's
right?
true. That's true.
That just means these are the times when it does finally.
Because if you think of all the trillions of cell divisions that'll happen in your body
It's
over your
actually very
lifetime,
impressive.
it's remarkable.
Yeah.
And then also the number of mutations that happen at every cell division is remarkably high too. And so
the idea is if you get a highly aggressive cancer, something that's dividing,
it divides real
rapidly,
fast, and
then
so it hits that limit,
and then it
then
kills itself.
Right, but of course, a lot of these cancers start to re-express telomerase, and then they
because they're like, I have the key.
they figure
You guys
it out.
have it in here, and you're not using it. Somebody use it.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of, and then there's all kinds of other stuff. And some people think about aging as a sort of a constellation of unique diseases. So, deterioration of your skin cells sort of thinning and propensity to get Alzheimer's and buildup of plaque and et cetera, et cetera. So some people are trying to approach these as unique things and just trying to tackle them individually and just thinking, if we just solve all of these, then we'll just live a lot longer, right?
Okay.
That's one approach. Some people are trying to look at the genes and they're like, but we should just try to fix this whole telomere thing and maybe that'll work, right? Of course, nobody really knows anything about anything. They're all just kind of like trying shit. That's what experiments are, right?
Yeah.
And then other people are looking at really weird shit. And so like I heard this experiment about they took a baby mouse and sewed it to an adult mouse and fused their circulatory systems together so that the baby blood is going into the and the adult mouse was in sort of equivalent aging terms relative to a human is like about a 65-year-old person, right?
So it's probably like 6 months old.
Yeah, it was basically
Mice don't live very long.
Yeah, they don't live very long. This one also didn't live very long because it was sewed to another mouse. But so they took a bunch of metrics on its like blood flow to its muscles and its health of its liver and all this other stuff, and they found that after getting a week of this baby blood running through its system, then all of its vitality markers dramatically improved as if it had like been brought down to half of its age. So I was
it depends on how much. Are they just averaging the ages of the blood, basically?
Could be. I don't know. So they did this, and I was like, I mean, this is both fucked up but interesting. But also, what are the practical implications of this?
Yeah, if it turns out it works, that means we have to start sewing babies to people.
I mean, this is such the epitome of like an academic study with no regard to what the sort of end point application of this. Because like if you come out and you go, great news, everybody, we have found immortality. All we have to do is sew a baby to you, and you just run around with a baby, sort of sewed to your chest for a while till it grows up, I guess. Then you got to get a new one kind of plugged in.
But every generation you probably have to attach more babies though, because now that baby is older. Because presumably it works both ways, So the baby gets aged while the adult gets youngened.
It might. Yeah, they didn't say anything about it, and it may just be that like because of the youthful stem cell blood or whatever the hell that like the older blood maybe just has nothing, where the baby blood has some. I don't know, but so that was one experiment where I was like, guys, come on! Like,
I love because the idea
is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, if you think about sitting around a table being like, all right, we got to figure this thing out. What if we just sew a young one to an old one? Just see what happens.
We're running out of ideas.
There were lots of other things they could have done. Like just
inject blood, for example.
Blood would have been in one,
or like just a transfusion. But they're like, no, it needs to be a constant stream.
Just sew them together.
I imagine that. So there's a thing called IRB. I can't remember what it even stands for, but it's basically
International Review Board.
I don't think it's internal, maybe
internal review board, something
perhaps.
Review board.
But so if you want to set up an experiment using animals, then you have to basically. Or people, but people's another thing entirely. But you have to go through this whole elaborate process where you say, here's what I'm going to do. Here's why it's important. Here's how many animals I'm going to use. Here's what I'm going to do to them. Here's how I'm going to minimize their suffering. Here's why I need that many animals. You can't just go
willy-nilly sewing mice to each other.
So not anymore. So in this case, they put in their application and they're like, we just need two.
Yeah. So at some point they went through this thing and they somehow came up with, there's some document somewhere that basically describes exactly why they're going to sew these mice together and exactly why they need however many they ended up
And a bunch of other people looked at that and they were like, yeah,
that sounds legit.
This
reasonable.
This needs to happen. So that happened. But then this other guy came out and started talking and I was like, oh, this is actually like, this seems to make sense to me in a common sense way. And it's potentially applicable. So he's like, I wanted to look at, people often talk about like diet and exercise and fasting. as being these sort of things that extend longevity. They increase vascularity of your muscles. They increase blood flow to your joints and stuff like that. And
so maybe the mouse was carrying around this extra weight because it had a baby sewn onto it. So it was really just exercising.
So it's just exercising more. Yeah.
And now it was eating for two. So it was also
starving, which and there actually is a lot of research about that. There are these kind of longevity mechanisms that your body has where if you fast for a day, then you get a boost to your immune system and a bunch of other things kind of kick in that otherwise kind of lie dormant. And these things are really good for you. Of course, prolonged fasting is called starving, and then that's really bad. Right? And so
you have to wonder too, like, is it about fasting or is it about not eating? And I say that because eating is bad for you, because that's basically
you're introducing all this chaos.
You're introducing all this chaos into your body. You're introducing all these different chemicals that your body has to deal with.
It's just rough on your system.
I mean, it's both required for you to live and also bad. It's like the main cause of all the mutations in your body is water. You can't get away from it, right? Because water actually chemically interacts with your DNA and fucks it up. So there are these processes that are happening all the time that are just repairing your DNA constantly.
Because water. I'm gonna get in there.
Yeah, so it's things
as we discussed earlier, it's because it also has oxygen in there, which is causing screaming and causing chaos everywhere.
Well, that's exactly why the water literally just breaks your DNA all the time. And so food is the same deal. You need it. You need water to do anything. You need food to continue adding resources into your body to rebuild itself, right? So it's all required.
So basically,
but it's also very bad for you.
So you're saying just like how if you take like a Tylenol, they're like it's fine and it's going to help you out. If you take a bunch of it, then it's poison, right?
Yeah.
And so
it's
food
it's
is
fine
also
and
poison.
not fine. Even a small amount is both fine and not fine, right? It's just that your body is really good at undoing the damage at small levels, right?
Right.
So there's basically no level of anything you can put in your body, even nothing, because your body's just damaging itself constantly. That is actually good for you. Your goal is basically just to find the things that are the least bad for you, right? And try to find those doses and that.
I feel like this is just sort of summing up on a meta level the approach to life that I've been trying.
Yeah. So when somebody's like, "This is a healthy food," the answer is no.
It's not.
It's just going to kill you, maybe on average.
Well, it has to be healthier than starving, right? Which is true of basically.
But as we discussed,
many foods,
small amounts of starving might actually be the healthiest thing.
But it's probably just because you're not eating.
So that's what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah,
not eating is the healthiest food,
right?
In very short bursts.
What about smoothies?
What about them?
I guess I got stuck on the eating aspect.
I think it's just ingesting. I don't think the chewing part is the relevant.
No. It's the putting of a thing.
It's one of those things where I said it and then I was like, that was very dumb. But I'm glad I
like where you're going though. You're exploring the space.
Trying to find the loophole.
Okay, so all right, so here's what the experiment was.
Although liquids are probably better for your intestines, so at least there's that.
It's true.
Or they're worse.
Or they're worse, depending on all
you know what?
Just depending on what the liquid is.
This is the whole thing. When people are like, I'm trying to optimize, it's like you are literally.
You don't know enough to optimize.
You are self-immolating even when you're just
you're a walking explosion.
Mm-hmm. All right. So regardless of the causes, this guy was looking at experiments on fasting, diet, exercise, whatever, and trying to find any kinds of hormonal markers or anything like that might be boosted during these events that occur that extend your longevity. He's like, what if I could make a pill that would trick your body into thinking that you had fasted or done exercise or done any of these stressors and kind of like introduce the hormonal benefits that you get from doing those things? That's assuming that
it's the hormone that's the benefit and not the fact that you're starving.
Yeah, well, apparently it is.
The fact that you're starving?
No, it's the hormones that get released by that, and then that affects some of these like longevity triggers that kind of like kick in. So he's talking about all these experiments he did with mice. He's like, I found this molecule that we've started dosing these mice with, and we did a bunch of like health experiments on them and ran a bunch of diagnostics to see how's their liver functioning, how long can they run on a treadmill, like all these other things, and then give them this molecule for a week, and then throw them on the treadmill again. Like on average, they're running 50% longer with no other exposure to the treadmill. They're not like exercising the whole time to get faster or anything like that. So they're getting all these fitness results. And this guy starts just taking it himself. So he started doing experiments on himself. So he
Which I assume he did not pass through a review board.
I don't think he did. And so he actually went to there's a clinic where they do a lot of blood work and other stuff to check all of your vital signs to see what your risks are, like what your sort of functional ages of different aspects of your body, so kidney function, liver function, these kinds of things. And he was 47, and before he started all this stuff, his sort of body age came back at about a functional level, about a 58-year-old. He's like, oh shit. So he started taking these things, but otherwise consciously trying to make no changes to anything else. And it came back with as a 31-year-old after a few weeks of taking this molecule.
According to the things they measured.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
The scientist is very skeptical in this room.
Oh yeah, no, I think sample size of one. This renegade scientist dosing himself with a drug.
No, I mean he started taking the drug because he had already been doing the science for a decade and publishing dozens of papers. Right?
Yeah. No, I mean I get that part. So. But
what are the long-term effects?
Yeah, what are the long-term effects, and what is it actually doing?
Well, the long-term effects might be that now there's just way too many people.
Well, that's already.
Yeah. So anyways,
happened.
Aging is complicated. Nobody knows anything about it. Adam is very skeptical about everything.
About everything. This has nothing to do with even this particular thing. It's just this one guy.
All right, let's get on to some questions. These questions come from our listeners over at podcast.bscotch.net. If you'd like to get your question on to a future episode, you can go over there and then do that. We still haven't updated that website yet, but
sometime
it gets the job done.
Yep.
All right, first question. Actually, it's a pair of questions. It's about the splaset, which we'll talk about. BLAKEBUCK says, it's been long enough. I would like an official update on Seth's basement/closet spa. Thank you. RetroBananaManNL says, how is the spa closet going? We haven't had an update in a while. Smiley face.
So what is this? What is even happening? What's a spa closet?
Spa closet. I went and did a float, which is where you lay in salt water or whatever. And in the waiting room, I thought, this waiting room is super nice, and it's very chill and meditative, and it's a good space meant to, just get you like out of distractions and stuff like that. And I thought it'd be awesome to have kind of a room in the house that's like that. I happen to have a fairly unused walk-in closet in the basement, and I thought, I'm going to turn this thing into a spa closet. So that means getting sound dampening panels, putting those on the walls, clearing out the space, getting a comfortable chair in there, and then a little table that I can put some kind of maybe like a white noise thing, maybe some tea, but otherwise it's a distraction-free space. So the biggest snag that I've run into is body heat.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
You go into, walk-in closets tend to not be ventilated.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep. You need to cut a hole in your door and put a fan in there.
Maybe what you should do is, instead of thinking about it like a spa, think about it like a sauna.
There you go. A steam bath.
Yeah.
Where I just bathe in the steam of my own sweat.
Yeah.
Because I go in there and I've got a bunch of the sound panels on. I've got like 80 sound dampening panels up in there. But
so can you feel it when you walk in the space? Can you feel the silence?
Yeah. Well, there's another problem, which is it's not soundproof. Right. So if something else is going on in the house, then you can kind of hear that coming through the walls or something. But yeah, the biggest thing is you sit in there. There's no air circulation, so I would need to get like a fan or something. But then, despite that, being in a room of that size for 20 minutes, it just starts to boil.
How much heat are you giving off? How many BTUs?
I run pretty hot, so
you'd be like a prime Matrix battery baby suspect.
Yeah. So that's something I didn't consider is like what I would do to the space. I was more thinking about it kind of the other way around. Right. So I need to figure that out.
Would a cooling solution be just the easiest thing?
I could get one of
double
those,
as a white noise machine, right?
Yeah. I could maybe get one of those CPU fans that we put on the computer and kind of just thermal paste that onto my forehead and then.
Well, I was gonna say, or you could basically install sort of a metal, like a copper block into the door, and then put a CPU fan on the other side of it, so it's not in there, so the noise is still on the outside, right?
Right.
And it's just sucking heat.
It's just going to induce. It's going to use inductive heat transference on the door.
Yeah. Or you can create a whole body kind of mesh made out of copper with a cable coming out of the belly button area that goes into that thing that's in the door.
Yep.
So that way you're capturing all of your heat and you're running it through these copper wires and then you're bringing it out the door through a CPU.
Actually, there's these things you can get that are for joint pain. It's a little sort of motorized box that you fill with ice water.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then it has these tubes. It uses liquid cooling. It has these tubes that go to things that are like wrapped around your knee or something like that. So it's more of like a constant ice pack as opposed to like if you put ice pack directly on your body, then it rapidly melts and warms up, right?
Now, is it your brain that's giving off all the heat, or is it
your whole body?
Your whole body.
I mean, your body is 98 degrees.
No, right? I know, but
yeah, and like good room temperature is like 70.
But if you recall, when we've done scuba diving before, and they're like, if you want to not get cold, the most important thing is to cover your head because you actually lose. I think in the water, you lose like 80% of your heat through your dome.
It's a high percent.
It's absurd. So I was curious if it's happening in the same way, because if that's the case, then you could just get maybe a cold towel, before you go in there, just slap a cold towel on your head.
It might work.
Oh, turn it into a sort of what do you call it when they do the face thing? It's like a spot, like a facial thing. Yeah, like a facial scrub.
Get some cucumbers, get some cold cucumbers, pop those on there, Just have a real spa experience.
Make a cucumber hat.
That's the thing is I lose about 90% of my heat through my eyes. So if I got, some super cold cucumbers, maybe that would. But then there's that problem of like, if I put the cucumbers on there, is it cooling me down or is it just trapping the heat in my eyes because now the cucumbers are like an eye shield? And then now I boil my eyes.
Well, after you warm them up, then you start to boil your eyes.
Yeah, so get real careful with it.
Yeah.
Make sure to eat them after a time and replace them with colder cucumbers.
Yeah, people never talk about.
Actually, now you have a constant stream of snacks.
Beautiful. So
I've got a bucket of ice water full of cucumber slices.
Yep.
And when the cucumbers get too hot to risk eye boiling, I take them off, I eat them, and then I put fresh cold ones.
Or you could approach it more like an assembly line situation. So get a cold towel, wrap it around your head, and then cucumbers on your eyes, and then more sets of cucumbers all the way up your head,
lined up,
so that then you pull this one off and eat it, and then pull the next pair down.
So you kind of on the cold towel, like a cucumber treadmill.
Yep.
Yeah, it would be better to automate it and make an actual head.
Yeah, because
get a robot.
Because I think one of the big points of this was to relax, but this is starting to sound like a lot of work.
I feel like we've covered a lot of ways. You just either need a complete mesh suit for your body made of copper, or a cucumber treadmill. It doesn't seem that crazy.
It's not that complicated.
And either one, something else is doing all the work for you now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's a third, probably ridiculous option, which is to figure out how to get ventilation put into the closet. But that seems crazy, so we'll probably just go with the cucumber treadmill thing.
Yeah. I mean, I suggested punching a hole in the door and putting a fan in there,
just physically.
Yeah,
punch it in there and then just kind of jank a fan into that location as much as possible.
Also,
jank it in there.
Jank it in there. It's a verb. But as much as you love LEDs, then there's also a perfect opportunity to get a sweet LED fan embedded.
Yeah, but LEDs give off heat, a small amount, but
very small.
But I mean, we're already over the limit here.
But again, put them on the outside. So now the fan is blowing, from the inside through some LEDs to the outside.
See, the problem is my burn rate is too high.
Yeah,
of what?
Of my body.
Oh, yes.
You're just a walking fire. This is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. So I don't want to increase my expenses of heat by adding LED strips. I gotta cut wherever I can.
What if you put some
increase my heat revenue?
So you can plug wires into a potato and use that to light up a light bulb.
Oh my god! Yes.
So what if we plug some really good wires into you, but ones that carry a lot of heat and stuff too, right? And then plug those into the LEDs so that now they're not generating more heat. They're just using your own body heat.
How much more power does the human body generate than a potato?
I don't know.
My guess would be just not that much more, because that just seems like it's how things
There must
work.
be somebody who has put some galvanized nails in their body and hooked it up to a light bulb to see.
Would that work? You could just do that.
I mean, why wouldn't it work? It works on a potato.
If it works with a potato, I assume there's not a lot. Maybe there is a lot going on in a potato.
You don't know.
What if potatoes have been sentient this whole time?
Potatoes have a very rich inner world.
We just don't get it. What's going on in there.
That's why they taste so good when they're fried.
It's the pain that they felt kind of baking in. All right, next question comes from John.
Speaking of potatoes, have you had purple potatoes?
Yeah. They look like beets.
Yeah, we had some this weekend, and oh my god, those are fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that was it.
Purple potatoes.
Yeah, they're like deep deep purple.
Well, this is one of those things where you think there's only one kind of, for example, potato.
Yeah.
And then you realize that there's
there's sweet potatoes and potatoes. Those are the two kinds of potatoes.
So I guess the purple ones are they're grape potatoes, right?
Basically,
like grape flavored.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have
That's how I understand purple.
You have this whole rainbow variety of all of these things. There's just one or two that become the dominant ones that everybody likes to eat. But they're all good.
I wonder how the green grape lobby feels about purple being associated with grape flavor. They must be pretty upset about it.
Yeah. And actually, speaking of weird things in grapes, I also this weekend found long grapes.
What?
We were at the grocery store getting stuff. We got some purple potatoes.
The grocery store you go?
I was walking by the grape section.
Was it one of those ones that just appears and then disappears? So there's one man in there.
Yeah, I don't know.
And there's a weird machine that tells you your fortune.
They were called moon drops because they needed some way to I don't know. But they were literally they're the same width as a normal one of these little fruits, right? Except it was literally 3 times as long. So they're these weird little fingers.
How does the end cap work? Is it still kind of a bulgy end cap, or is it like a pokey one, kind of like a pepper?
They're actually a little bit inverted.
Inverted?
Yeah.
I'm bamboozled.
So I got some because I was like, I have to know, and it just tastes like basically a really sweet grape. So there's nothing really interesting about the taste, but the appearance really is creepy.
It's just a long weird.
It's just a long.
It's a good thing they didn't call them finger grapes. I feel like that would have been
because you've got fingerling potatoes, right? And so these are basically fingerling grapes.
But I think because you always have to do something to a potato to eat it versus a grape you just eat. And so if it's called a finger, it kind of feels like you're just eating a finger, which is wrong. You got to prepare that.
It's a little
finger.
weird.
So I assume this weekend you're like, I got to go run some errands, and you're driving by, and then you see a big sign, and it's like, Steve's Corner Store. We got a special on purple potatoes and long grapes this weekend. And you're like, I got to get in. I got to get in.
Uh-huh.
I got to get in on that.
Yeah. My policy is if I see something that I haven't had before that strikes my fancy, I have to try that thing. And so long grapes really fit the bill.
You have eaten a scorpion, so I feel like at this point,
what's a long grape?
An elongated grape.
A long grape in some ways is weirder than a scorpion, because a scorpion, you know exactly what you're getting into. Like you're eating a scorpion.
Yeah, we've all been there.
A long grape, though.
How did that even
your whole life you've been eating grapes that are all exactly like one another, exactly normal shape.
This reminds me of when I learned the true definition of what a berry is.
Yeah.
And then I discovered that watermelons are berries.
Yeah.
Tomatoes are berries. Raspberries are not berries.
Are avocados berries?
Yes. Most fruits are berries, and most berries are not berries. I don't know. The world is topsy-turvy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next question comes from JohnPatChap. What sort of mental checklist, if any, do you go through to make sure you can tell the difference between a can we not and a I don't feel like it? Ooh. Basically, how do you make sure that your brain and your teammates' brains aren't secretly making excuses to be lazy? Brains love to do that kind of stuff.
That is true. The question is there a difference between being strategically lazy, which is what can we not is, and actually being lazy?
Well, it's about the benefit of doing the thing.
Correct.
Right? Because if doing the thing has a clearly enormous benefit, but you then don't do it because you don't want to, then, that's not a can we not. That's a I'd rather not situation.
Because everything has a cost, which is you got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. You got to do it. And so it's all about the reward of having done it. And so the can we not philosophy is all about the fact that almost everything you do doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But some things still do, though. And some things matter quite a bit. And
a lot of things
and
matter.
most of those things you still don't want to do.
Yeah. And a lot of things matter a tiny bit.
Yeah.
And some things don't matter uniquely, but they matter sort of in the aggregate.
Yeah.
So like if I didn't go to the gym today, that's fine.
Doesn't matter at all.
If I didn't go tomorrow, that's also probably fine. If I don't go for 38 days in a row, I'm going to start to have a bad time.
It's not fine anymore.
Yep.
So
how do you tell the difference then when you're approaching a potential can we not scenario?
Well, for us, the can we not came down to finding things that were mostly cost with basically no benefit.
Or very hard to determine benefit.
Yeah.
And there's some things where you can think, well, I can see how maybe this would be useful, except there's actually no way to ever find out.
Mm-hmm.
The cost is really high. And so even if you do that thing, you never get to find out if it was worth your while to do. And so for those also, sometimes we still do them anyway because we believe enough that it's probably important. But other times we say, well, we can never know if this was worth our while, so maybe we should just not do that thing.
Yeah. So it's about understanding your goals and your values.
Yeah.
And then making decisions to do things that should adhere to your values and get you closer to your goals.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say, hey, turns out that I've been logging our time and we are in meetings for 30 out of 40 hours of the week. What if instead of doing that, we did our jobs,
Unless your goal is to be in meetings most of the time.
In which case, you're nailing it.
Yep.
And you cannot not because you must be in those meetings.
Yep.
And so really it's just about, measure things, sort of figure out where your time is going.
Well, I think it's really just about asking those questions about what the hell you're trying to extract out of something. Because I think the beneficial thing about the Can We Not is not usually about just not doing something. It's about finding a better way to extract the same value without doing some part of the previous
It's all about
operation.
the reason for the thing, not about the doing of the thing.
Right. So in our case, for example, an easy one actually with Twitter. So we're always kind of ragging on Twitter about being a bit of a waste of time because we can't figure out how it could possibly be useful, and the sort of the use of it on the daily that's required to build up what appears to be enough momentum to make it useful is very costly, at least so far as we've
It's costly both
understood.
in terms of time, but also by exposing yourself to the sort of style of communication that Twitter has, you, in the long term, make yourself far worse at focusing.
Well, and even in the short term.
In the short term, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It puts you into a distractible state that is hard to recover from and actually get shit.
So the costs are actually enormously high to using that platform.
But it's one of those things where we're like, we think there might be something in here, but we need to obviously limit how this works as far as how the studio goes. So one is that not everybody in the studio uses it at all. And the other one is that we don't actually use Twitter itself to handle all that. So because we want to be able to put out communications through that thing as like a broadcast, but we don't have to go into Twitter to do that. So we use a program called Hootsuite. And then if I ever have a thing where I'm like, okay, we need to schedule some social media stuff, then instead of doing it, day by day, popping in on Twitter, writing the tweet there or copy pasting it in, you just schedule it all in one batch. Take 2-3 hours and schedule like a week or two of this content and then literally don't look at it.
Do that once a week.
Yeah. And so you can find those ways to sort of, okay, so for example, in this case, we think there might be some value in this thing, but not nearly enough to warrant the sort of usage that most people in using it in the way that most people do. So how can we get that value
without suffering?
Yeah. And so you kind of play that game.
Yeah. So it's not purely about just not doing things at all.
It's about not doing certain aspects of things.
It's about just identifying high cost, low reward things.
Well, I think
which is basically low leverage.
Yeah, and similarly, we have lots of design discussions about ideas that we have for the game and stuff like that. And we were kind of realizing that we had gotten into the habit of anytime one of us had an idea, just sort of flat out, we would quickly grab that other person and be like, "Hey, we need to talk about this. I just thought of something." And then we'd like hit the whiteboard and then kind of debate it for an hour. But then that was always kind of interruptive and derailing, and it's hard to find time to focus if you don't know whether or not all of a sudden you'll be in a design meeting for the rest of the afternoon. So instead, we shifted those design discussions over to Trello, where if somebody had an idea, they would make a Trello card for it, add the other person. They'd say, "Hey, I thought this might be an interesting thing. Here's what I think it would look like." And then when the other person sees it over time, they'll add their comments. And then you just have this kind of, it's almost like then just like an email exchange that's happening on when people have the time to think about it and discuss it. And the discussions happen in a much more concise way as well, right? Because people will think about something for a while, let it kind of simmer, and then make a very brief comment about it. So we've kind of shifted a lot of our design discussions into that. The Can We Not is all about trimming the fat on all of your interactions and all the things that you do. All right, and on the same kind of a vein, we've got a question from the Cake Gamer. Hey, BS Bros, I've been listening to the podcast daily for a while now, and I'd really like to be in one, and it would be amazing if you answered this one. So there we go.
Is it good? It better be good.
That was the whole thing. No, I'm just kidding. My question is, how do you guys manage to get so motivated all the time? Is there a special trick or something you do, or is it just your personality? By the way, do you like puns? Yes, we do.
Yes.
And
motivation.
The trick is we are not motivated all the time. This is a Facebook problem. When you go to Facebook, you see everybody presenting their best selves. People take a bunch of selfies, like 90 of them,
doing amazing things.
And then and then they put a bunch of filters on them, and then they pick the best one, and they're like, "Oh, just snapped this casually, thought I was looking good," And then you think, and you see picture after picture after picture of this, and you think, this is just what this person looks like all the time, and they must be just amazing.
Well, yeah, and also people take pictures of food when they go out to restaurants.
Yeah, and you think
fancy restaurants.
Yeah.
So the only pictures you're going to see of their food are of the things that other people made for them in expensive places. Right?
Yeah, and maybe
you don't see the shitty toast that they made this morning where they didn't even butter all the way to the edges.
Yeah, or you see an athlete and they're like, oh, like I thought I looked good in this picture, so bleh, and it's like, oh, they had just finished a really intense workout and they're all sweaty and they're like their abs are just rippling, you know, and it's
jacked.
Like if you caught that person like right as they woke up in the morning, their stomach would kind of look like a
stomach,
like a blob, you know, because right after you work out, there's your muscles kind of swell, and then you're also sweaty, so you get like the glinting of the sun, you know, and it's like that's when you do not look like that at any time other than for 5 minutes, like right after you just really.
So you're saying that the weekly podcast is essentially this high dose appearance of us that seems like we're super motivated.
Yeah, and to think about this, like why would we want to talk about, why would we be reading books like Deep Work, and why would we be talking about all these studio principles and stuff if we were just fine all the time, you know? It's a constant struggle. Like you're always trying to find ways to do things better because things are like we're people and our brains are people brains.
Yeah.
And they're always doing stupid shit.
Well, they're complicated and you get tired of stuff. So I got a good example from last week. So I was on a 8-day streak of doing my art practice. So the longest one I've ever had was like 21 days. And both times, both at the 21-day mark and then what happened last Thursday, the same thing happened, which is that I got so damn tired of just waking up in the morning and doing my art for an hour.
Even though you can objectively kind of go down your checklist and be like, this is really good for me.
Yeah, it's good for me. I care about it. It's important, but after 8 straight days of doing it, I was just sort of enraged.
I don't want to.
I was like, no. And so I was like, I need to do something else. But I felt bad about it because it's the same question, which is the question I've always struggled with was, as a person, knowing that I, like the lazy brain idea, knowing that I will try to weasel my way out of things, am I the sort of entity that can actually give myself a break? So if I'm working for 8 days straight and then I'm like, I feel like I don't want to do this right now, am I the person who should be able to have that power to give me a, relaxation session or to break?
Yeah, well, this is that question of cheat days, right? That people also use for dieting and exercise and all kinds of stuff. Which, if you're living for the cheat day,
right,
then are you living?
So it's the thing, but the thing is, like, I've genuinely been living for doing the art on those days, but just after 8 days of it, I just wanted to explode.
Yeah, I think, which is then a very different thing. I think. If you're just like,
so it became this, and we talk about this stuff on the podcast as far as how you figure out how to practice, plugging in these times. But the reality is that there's always these ebbs and flows to all this stuff. And I think learning your own style and then getting to a point where you can trust that you're not just kind of like the previous question, the can we not question, that you're not just giving yourself a pass to be lazy, but that you genuinely, you've done a bunch of good work and now it's time to kind of kick back a little bit and let your brain rest.
Yeah. And I think there's a big misconception about motivation. Which is that motivation is all about willpower, which is sort of like
I used to be in that camp, I think, pretty firmly. Yeah. Like it was all about you and like you need to come to the table with this tank of willpower.
So you're saying like all else equal, it's time to just start going to the gym, or whatever. And so I actually have a talk on YouTube called Do What You Want, which is about this problem. I think the best kind of analogy would be if you think of sort of the forces in your life as being a river, but being motivated is swimming upstream. Like you're just constantly battling everything that's pushing you in a very specific direction.
But if you instead build a bunch of dams,
yes,
and make the river go where you want it to
get a flotilla of boats with you,
right? You change the current. You do something to get into a different river that's going a different direction, right? Or get some tools like boats that are gonna assist you, right?
Or friends, right?
So if you like, one of the things that I did was I think that like many people, I have addictive aspects of my personality, and I'd sort of like fall into traps like Reddit or YouTube or whatever. And I know this about myself. So one of the things I did was I literally blocked Reddit at the router level at my house.
Perfect.
So that as long as I'm on my Wi-Fi at my house, I just can't go there. Even if I need to go there for work, it's like, well, I'll go when I get to work, It's an important thing to do. And after doing that for 6 months,
you feel the pull less.
It just kind of goes away. Right. And so, or things like knowing that that it's hard for you to be motivated to run in the morning, but it's something you want to do, right? Well, then you need to start making a list of like, what are the things that make it so fucking hard? And like, what are the barriers when I wake up in the morning? You know, maybe it's like, I don't want to get out of bed. Okay, well, put your alarm in the kitchen. You know, oh, I don't want to get dressed. Okay, go to bed in your gym clothes. Well, I mean, put your shoes next to the alarm clock.
Right, and there's even other ways to come at it, which is the thing I've experienced this year in particular with the art teacher that I'd gotten, was that having someone else be the one who was responsible for cracking the whip.
Get a coach.
Made it so much easier to do everything.
Well, this is also what's really helpful in the studio is because the reason we have, so we know lots of companies that don't have an official start time or a stop time or whatever. But if you have those things, you don't have to be motivated anymore. You don't have to be like,
you're just supposed to be there.
You're supposed to be there. You know, you're basically following rules that you have agreed that you will follow.
Right? It doesn't matter how you feel about it. You're supposed to be there.
Otherwise, you're late, and being late is bad, right?
Yeah. And everybody else is already there, and they're going to be like, ugh, and they're going to give you the side eye, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
to motivate you.
It's way easier to come into the office and work because everybody's here working. It's way easier to go for a run if you have a running group, for example, that you go on runs with in the morning who are counting on you to appear somewhere.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of ways you can do it where you don't have to be so.
And especially if none of you know each other's phone numbers, but you're not allowed to leave until everybody is there, because now you can't just send them a text and be like,
that's a fun one.
Yeah.
You say, or if you do have everybody's phone numbers, you say phones are off. Like from the moment you wake up, your phone is off, and there is no
you don't get to cheat out of it.
There's no getting out of it. You're gonna have to deal with the social issues of standing somebody up who didn't know about it
and forcing them to wait,
which means you'll probably just show up.
Yep.
You know, because I do think that smartphones and texting and all this stuff does make it so much easier to cancel plans and get out of things.
Oh yeah.
So it's not a personal problem; it's a structural problem.
Yeah.
And just like, for example, in that book, like The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, or books like The Power of Habit, which are excellent books about this exact thing, which is that by taking a really hard look at your surroundings and at your processes for doing all the things that you habitually do in your life, you will discover that over time, you will just sort of automatically construct your life to make yourself super lazy.
Yeah.
Like that's just an automatic behavior that everybody has, you know? And so you need to constantly disrupt it and make dramatic changes to things to kind of like spark yourself back into having a good structure to get things done.
Yeah, and it's mostly about the willpower you need is a willpower to set up the external things now that will then make it so you don't. Yeah, so they'll be held accountable later.
I mean, like I have a piano teacher. I probably would not be playing piano anymore. And I probably wouldn't. I probably would have stopped 3 months ago.
My new favorite thing
if I didn't have somebody weekly checking it out.
Yeah, on Tuesdays I go to there's a 3-hour figure drawing group that meets up in the St. Louis Artists Guild, and it costs money. So as soon as I appear there, then I have to. I'm going to stay here for 3 hours.
I paid my $10. I'm sticking around.
And before it was like if I got a 3-hour chunk of time, I would get that maybe once every like 3 or 4 weeks in terms of this art practice thing. But now I get it literally every week.
But also, if you have a 3-hour chunk of time, if you're like, I'm going to draw at home, you know, there you are, like sitting right next to your Nintendo Switch, your TV, your computer. You know, your wife is there. You want to chat with her. Yep. There's great food. And you're like, nope, I'm supposed to just ignore all this stuff for 3. Like, this is a structural problem.
Yeah, what am I, Hercules?
Yeah. No, you go to an art class for 3 hours where you've got no fucking option and you spent money on it so that you would feel like you're ripping yourself off if you didn't.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to forget about the sunk cost fallacy and just roll in it.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, I've spent the money and now I got to get my money's worth.
Exactly.
Like, no, you could just walk out of that class at any time. But also, you know, you also then create a social pressure for yourself because you don't want to be the person who like everybody stares at as you just like walk out in the middle of the class and I'm going to go watch Netflix, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So don't. I think
find those external structures and take the pressure off yourself. Is basically the idea because I mean culturally, I think in the States in particular, there's this big myth about individuals being the sort of superpower of the thing, and the reality is you have to be in a good setting and you have to be in a good structure for all this stuff to actually work on an individual level. And you can see this. Some people, sometimes you'll switch jobs or you'll switch into a different friend group or whatever else, and your whole life just gets better because you're in a better setting.
You hit a reset.
Yeah, a better structured setting lets you do what you want.
Yeah. So that's where to put your focus. Do that. And that's why we recommend books like Deep Work, The Power of Habit, Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. If you just feel kind of like overwhelmed and like your home life is chaos, you know. Maybe watch some Queer Eye because they got some good tips in there as well.
Get a haircut.
Get a haircut, shave, redo your living room or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is still the case. Every once in a while, I'm just kind of tired of stuff. I just go like just groom like a maniac. It's just like trim just all of the hair, like buzz make my scalp nice and smooth. Just like do the whole thing. There's something about that experience.
This is what I love.
Take control.
What I love about having a shaved head is that like every 3 or 4 days, I get just this like totally smooth reset where I just feel so good. I'm just like everything. It's kind of like when you fill up your gas tank and you're just like,
I'm ready.
This is fine. I don't have to worry about this now for quite a while. I could I could go 400 miles or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think this is why appearance is important in that sense, right? Because it changes how you view yourself.
It changes how you view yourself and how other people view you.
Yeah, but I mean, even like if you're working from home, because we talked about this in the past too, right? It's so easy just to be like, well, I'm at home, I get to just look however the fuck I want, right? And so you put no time into yourself. You don't do any of your grooming. You don't do any of your stuff that you would do if you were going to go out. It doesn't mean you have to do like necessarily all the things you would do, right? But just by doing something. So for me, it's like I'm always wearing the same kind of pants I would go outside with, right? Always.
So that if you ever need to do an errand or whatever.
Well, it's not even that. If I'm not, then I don't feel like I'm a full human being, and I'm not going to get anything done.
Yeah.
I'm actually guaranteed not to get anything done.
I don't actually own sweatpants.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I do.
I own one pair of pajama pants.
And my workout shirts are of the kind where if somebody saw me, they wouldn't quite know whether it was a workout shirt or if I was just wearing like
I actually just work
t-shirt.
Out in the shirts that I'm normally wearing.
Right.
Because that way also fewer clothes to change,
That is true.
How much sweat are you producing that you need tech to wick it off your body? You know what I mean?
I have a lot.
As
we discussed.
But that's what towels
I have a lot
for.
of eye sweat.
Bring a towel.
Because I got those hot eyes. So then some people call them tears. I call it eye sweat. While I'm working out,
just
really
weeping.
really just kind of gets I get damp.
Tear juice does really kind of clog up your pores.
It's very salty. I need a lot of Gatorade, to replenish my ducts.
Yeah.
So. All right, well, that's all the time we have for this week. We'd like to thank our producer, Fat Bard, for making us sound good. Thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. If you'd like to get more involved in the Butterscotch community, you can hop into our Discord server at discord.gg/bscotch and come say hello. Also, if you'd like to adorn your body with Butterscotch merch, you can check out our shop over at shop.bscotch.net. Or if you'd like to send us something, we have a mailbox, which you can find the address for over at mailbox.bscotch.net. If you would like to donate to the podcast, we have donations open at moneygrab.bscotch.net. And of course, as discussed earlier, we have the Shenanicon coming, which tickets are $15. It's on October 20th.
It's going to be awesome.
All details over at meet.bscotch.
Exercise that practice of not having to have willpower by just doing it right now.
There you go.
Just go to meet.bscotch.net.
Yeah, do yourself a huge favor. Go over to meet.bscotch.net and buy a ticket. And you're good to go.
And now you've obligated yourself, so now you got to make some travel plans.
You got to do it because
get on it.
Sunk cost fallacy.
Exactly.
So, all right, well, thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.